Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. So, you've met someone who is charming and charismatic and fun and attentive and, oh yeah, sexy. Your relationship is the most exciting you've ever experienced at first. Then you see red flags. I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'll answer the question, can a relationship with a sociopath work? At the end of my presentation, I'll answer your questions. To join the chat or ask a question, please be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Okay. So, the beginning of your involvement with this person was fantastic. But now your relationship isn't as pleasant as it once was. You're seeing some behaviors that bother you, or your partner runs hot and cold. After a few nasty incidents, you Google words like pathological lying and see descriptions that sound like your partner. You suspect that he or she may be a sociopath. Now you have a dilemma. When times are good, they're really good. You like the sex. You don't want to leave and throw it all away. So you wonder, can a relationship with a sociopath work? Well, the answer depends on what you mean by work. If by work you mean a full romantic partnership where the two of you support each other and care for each other, the answer is no. It will never happen. Why? Because supportive, caring, romantic relationships are built on love, and sociopaths do not have the ability to love like the rest of us do. Now, remember, I've explained a few times that Lovefraud uses the word sociopath as an umbrella term for people with antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, or psychopathic personality disorders. People with any of these disorders are impaired in their ability to love. Antisocials and psychopaths can't love at all. Narcissists are so focused on themselves that they don't care about anybody else. Borderlines are so afraid of abandonment that they often engage in behavior that makes people abandon them. And histrionics always want to be the center of attention. There is no room for you. In short, anyone with an exploitative personality disorder makes a terrible romantic partner. These people may be interesting and fun. They may be really, really exciting in bed. But an involvement with them is always all about them, their desires, their needs, their priorities. There is no give and take. It's you give and they take. Furthermore, you cannot expect your relationship to be monogamous. Most sociopaths cheat. If you have a problem with that, you will be unhappy with a sociopathic partner. So, can the relationship continue? Here's the bottom line. You might be able to coexist with a sociopath, but it will be difficult. I've heard from many people who have been in long-term marriages and relationships, and after quite a few years, 10, 20, 30, finally realized that their partners were disordered. I have stories like this in my upcoming book called Senior Sociopaths. They've been with this person for years, and now they have children, homes, businesses, and financial involvements with the sociopath that would be very difficult to untangle. So they stay. This might be workable depending on the type of sociopath that you're dealing with. Some sociopaths are parasites. They latch onto you, draw you into a relationship, and once you're committed, just sponge off of you. They don't really bother you because they don't want to kill off their host. Narcissists, borderlines, and histrionics may create a lot of drama. If you can tune out the drama, then maybe you can continue. Other sociopaths want you around because you help to create the image that they want to project. Or they may want you to provide cover for them while they live a double life of sex, drugs, or crime. These sociopaths may never take anything from you. In fact, they may actually support you, perhaps lavishly. They are content to keep you around as long as you are useful. Once they decide that you're not useful, there's a pretty good chance that they'll dump you. So, will a relationship with a sociopath work? If your partner isn't violent or overly abusive, it could be possible to coexist with him or her. You could be together, but live your own separate lives. You may get really good at ignoring your partner. Your relationship won't be romantic or fulfilling, but it might be manageable. So if you realize that your partner is disordered and you're asking yourself, can a relationship with a sociopath work? Here's my advice. If you have no children together, definitely leave. If you do have children together, seriously consider leaving. You have to evaluate your situation carefully. Is it safer for you and your kids to leave or to stay? If you choose to stay with a disordered partner, secretly stash money away for the future in case you need to leave or in case you get discarded. Many people, even mental health professionals, believe that sociopaths mellow out with age, but this is not true. That's the main point of my new book, Senior Sociopaths, which is coming out in May. The book is based on the Lovefraud Senior Sociopath Survey, which I conducted a few years ago. I asked Lovefraud readers about people who they believed were sociopaths and were over the age of 50. More than 2,000 people completed my survey. 40% of those people knew the individuals both before and after they were 50 years old. Of them, 91% said that after the sociopaths turned 50, their deceit and manipulation stayed the same or became worse. Keep this in mind. Once sociopaths are adults, there is no rehabilitation. They will never develop a heart or a conscience. They will never learn to love. Sociopaths do not get better. So ask yourself, what happens when you get old and are stuck in a wheelchair? Do you want your sociopathic partner in charge of your health care or your finances? It's food for thought. Okay, so let's take a look, see if we have some questions. I see a bunch of comments here. Okay, so Alicia says she was in love with someone who checked both the positive and negatives of a sociopath. Pathological liar was the biggest. The guy said he would get therapy and said that he had spoken to a counselor. He recently committed suicide after I left. He left messages on my cell phone saying he would be gone forever. I still miss him in spite of things going way downhill before he passed. Okay. I'm assuming that you actually met this person and you had an in-person relationship with him. It wasn't just online because, and the reason I say that is because I've heard of quite a few people who engaged in online relationships with sociopaths, and the sociopath threatened to commit suicide and essentially fabricated it and then pretended to be someone else when he was actually very much alive and just trying to put somebody else through the ringer. Hopefully Well, I don't know if that's better or worse than your situation. It's pretty rare for sociopaths to actually go ahead and commit suicide, although sometimes they do. In any event, it's not your fault. Okay? When a sociopath commits suicide, it's probably for one of two reasons. The first reason is that their behavior is catching up with them. Perhaps they're about to be arrested. Perhaps they're about to lose everything. They really have gotten to the place where they're running out of options. And so some of them actually say, okay, game over, then I'm not going to play anymore. And they think they're going out in a blaze of glory or something like that. So that's a possibility. The other possibility is that sociopaths are so vindictive that they want to burden you or whoever their partner is for the rest of your life with the idea that it's your fault. So I want to emphasize that it is not your fault. If this person did in fact commit suicide, it was his decision. And you can't take it on. Okay? You may need to work on your recovery, but this person made that choice. It's not you. There's nothing you could have done to make it any different. So I just ask that you definitely do not take this on as if you would have had any influence, because they do what they do, and it's not your fault. Okay, so Lisa asks, why do I always pick these people? My mom is a narcissist. Can this be a piece of why? Plus, I've always had extremely addictive behavior. Life is so short, tired of wasting all my time. Well, Lisa, yes, if your mom is a narcissist, then absolutely that probably has a lot to do with why you're running into the people that you're running into. When you grow up with a narcissist, your perception of what people are and what relationships are becomes really skewed. Part of the reason is because when you have a disordered mother, you spend your life trying to make them happy and keeping your eye and being really sensitive to them, because you suspect that you're responsible for their happiness. And of course they tell you that. And they make it very clear that everything that's wrong in their life is your fault or the kid's fault or something like that. So I would say that yes, that's definitely an issue that needs to be looked at. And there's a book you might want to look into. It's called Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And it's for daughters of narcissistic mothers. I think the name of the author is McBride, but I'm not positive about that. But the title is Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And you might want to get that because she explains very clearly what happens when women have narcissistic mothers and how it affects your development and your growth, and how it carries over into your adult life. So absolutely, I'm sure that's a cause for what's going on. So maybe you should get the book and also figure out a way to work on your recovery. Okay. All right, so Alicia says, what do you think of what people call radical acceptance? I actually thought about that before I left. Like, could I still be with him just because I adored him, but his love just started to hurt too much? Radical acceptance is very powerful. The book was written by Tara Brach, and essentially what it means is you accept what is. And this is really important, especially when you're dealing with a sociopath, or you were dealing with a sociopath, because part of the reason we have so much upset about an involvement with a sociopath is because we want things to be different. We want whatever has happened in the past where we were injured, we want that to be different. We want the future to be different. We want this person to behave differently. And it's not going to happen, okay? So that's what radical acceptance means. Radical acceptance means that the events that have happened are in the past. They can't be changed. Other people make their own decisions. You only have very limited influence over what other people do. And the only person you're really in charge of is yourself. So if you accept that other things outside of you are what they are, that gives you permission to just change what can be changed, which is you and your behavior. So radical acceptance is a really good strategy and a really good thing to learn about. So I recommend that you get that book called Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach. It's pretty helpful. It's a good concept. Okay, so Josie says, there was just so much fear being involved with the sociopath, antisocial. Fear after realizing their manipulation, lies, cheating, threats. How long does it take to let go of the fear? Well, fear is just one of the negative emotions that you get when you tangle with a sociopath. There's anger, there's betrayal, there's grief, there's disappointment, all these negative emotions. Fear is just one of them. All of that needs to be addressed. And I've talked about this a few times. The best thing that you can do is to commit to your emotional recovery. And it's not easy because, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the situations where we find ourselves involved with sociopaths, they have their roots further back in our lives. Maybe like the previous question, it could have been your mother, like Lisa asked. Addressing those emotional wounds is very important, and that's how you overcome all of it. And what that means is that you actually allow yourself to feel what those wounds feel like, whether it's pain, grief, anger, fear, disappointment, betrayal, all of those things. This is not fun, okay? It's not easy. You kind of have to let those really negative emotions come up from within you. It's not pretty. You probably don't want to do it around other people, except perhaps for a qualified therapist. And it takes time. So I can't tell you exactly how long it will take. It kind of depends on the length of the involvement. It also depends on what other injuries and wounds you have within you. Because what happens is, anytime we have these experiences that leaves us with a wound and leaves us with this kind of emotion, typically we do not address it when it happens, especially if there are things that happen when we're young, a child. So it just stays locked up inside of us. We stuff it down, we go on with our day, we go on with our life. And this energy of the wounds and the pain is inside us. And that's what attracts the sociopath. So you need to get that out of your system. And that's what the recovery process is all about. It takes time, but it's definitely worth the effort, because, once you get this stuff out of your system, you clear up, and you have an opportunity for a lot more living and a lot more of what you really want in your life. Okay, so Beautifully Average asks, do borderlines love, or are they like the other disorders and don't? I have heard that they love too much and cause drama and problems. Borderlines are not quite the same as antisocials or narcissists or psychopaths, in that the essential feature of borderline personality disorder is anxiety. That's certainly not the case with most sociopaths and narcissists, antisocials and narcissists, I mean. And borderlines have often had really troubled past. Most people who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder are women, and many of these women have been sexually abused when they were young. The men who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder have often been shamed when they were young. So people with this disorder really suffer. Unfortunately, the way that the people with the disorder treat others ends up looking a lot like people like the antisocials and narcissists and psychopaths. They tend to fly off the handle. The relationships can be shallow. They are manipulative. They're always testing people. So it's unfortunate how they became disordered, but I would advise that anybody who has any one of these personality disorders is not a good romantic partner. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be really hard, because they do have so many issues. Whether they love too much, perhaps, but the love it's not a healthy love. I mean, they latch on because they're afraid of being abandoned. So that's one of the prime issues, with borderline personality disorder. But, for the person on the receiving end, it's a very difficult place to be. Oh, Alicia, thanks you for the tip. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, so Callboy says, is it normal, common for a sociopath to be narcissistic and also self-loathing? There are people who say those with antisocial or psychopathic personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder are self-loathing. I'm not sure that's the case. I certainly didn't see that in my disordered ex-husband. So there's a lot of theory going on there about whether these folks actually hate themselves. In all honesty, I don't necessarily agree with that. I've had plenty of people who claim to be sociopaths, self-identify, tell me how proud they are of their behavior and how they are evolution's next step. I haven't had people who claim to be sociopaths also tell me that they hate themselves. So I'm not real sure of the accuracy of that whole concept. My sociopathic husband, this is from Chanel, is 54. I'm 33. He's gotten worse with age. Manipulative, lies, cranky, and not interested in sex. He also changed his appearance. Why do they seek younger women to manipulate? Well, older guys looking for younger women isn't necessarily limited to sociopaths. So the the fact that he manipulates lies and everything else definitely are sociopathic traits, but going after younger women, plenty of guys do that. So, but that doesn't excuse him, and hopefully you're getting out of that situation. Okay, so the question here is, Chanel asked, do you believe that codependency is just another form of narcissism? Codependency is probably overrated. My colleague, Dr. Leanne Leadham, and I did a scientific paper a couple of years ago, and one of the things that we looked at was this whole concept of codependency. I tend to think that some therapists may also almost be using the idea of codependency as not intentionally, but the effect is victim blaming. I mean, you're saying to the person that there's something wrong with them, they're codependent, and that's why they're in this relationship. Now, one of the things that we found in our research is that the symptoms of codependency are very similar to the symptoms of trauma bonds. So what may be going on is that people are actually traumatized, which is why they're in these relationships, because of the way that they're affected. For example, you've probably heard of the concept of fight or flight, and then there's also freeze. When there's danger, you either fight or you run away. That's flight. Or you freeze, you just hold still. And there's another possible reaction, which is called friend. And what that means is that when people are in situations where they're feeling threatened, a very normal response is to try to pacify that person and take care of that person, and essentially, bring the threat level down a bit by being nice to them. Well, sometimes that looks like codependency, when in reality it might be a normal response to a trauma situation. So we have a whole list of these comparisons between what constitutes codependency and what constitutes trauma, and they're very similar. So it could very well be that many people who are being told they're codependent are not codependent at all, they're traumatized. So I would be careful about accepting that evaluation if somebody has told you that you're codependent. Okay, so Alicia asks, is it possible to be both sociopathic and borderline simultaneously? There's a lot of overlap among all of these disorders, and that's one reason why I talk about them as a group. All those disorders, antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, psychopathic, because they are so similar, and it's not always easy to tell if it's one or the other, and in most cases it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's possible for people to have multiple disorders. It's called comorbidity, and it's not always possible to isolate exactly what somebody's disorder is. So if you're not a therapist trying to treat somebody who has these disorders, then I'd say it's not all that important to figure out precisely what is wrong. I mean, all you need to know is that it's serious. This person is, if they're an adult, they're probably not going to get better, and you need to get the person out of your life. Okay. All right. Well, that looks like the end of the questions for today. I thank everybody for joining me, and we'll be here next week for the next episode of Lovefraud Live. See you later. Bye-bye.